The head nurse's fingers trembled as she pressed the folded paper into my palm. Her eyes darted toward room 304 where my husband lay sleeping, his leg elevated in a cast, then back to my face with an urgency that made my stomach clench. She leaned close enough that I could smell the antiseptic on her scrubs and whispered 3 words that would shatter everything: check the camera. Before I could ask what she meant, she walked away quickly, her white sneakers squeaking against the polished hospital floor. I stood frozen in the corridor, the paper burning against my skin like a secret too dangerous to hold. Around me, the hospital continued its normal rhythm. Monitors beeped steadily from open doorways. An orderly pushed a meal cart past me, the smell of institutional food mixing with cleaning solution. A doctor laughed at the nurse's station, discussing weekend plans with a colleague. But nothing felt normal anymore. I looked down at the note, my hands shaking as I unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was rushed, almost frantic. Don't come again. Check the camera. He brings her when you're not here. I'm sorry. You deserve to know. My legs nearly gave out. I grabbed the wall for support, the cool painted surface the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly tilted sideways. Who was her? What camera? My mind raced through possibilities, each one more painful than the last. The nurse had disappeared around the corner. I wanted to chase her down, demand explanations, shake answers from her shoulders. But my feet wouldn't move. Instead, I stared at the door to room 304, where my husband of 8 years lay recovering from what he'd called a stupid accident at the gym. Brandon Sterling. My husband. The man who'd promised forever on a beach in Mexico, who'd held my hand through my father's funeral, who still kissed my forehead every morning before work. At least, I'd thought he did all those things. Now this note suggested there was a Brandon I didn't know at all. I forced myself to breathe slowly, counting each inhale and exhale the way my yoga instructor had taught me. The panic attack I felt building couldn't happen here, not in this public hallway where anyone could see. I folded the note carefully and slipped it into my purse, my fingers brushing against my phone. The camera. We had security cameras at home. Brandon had insisted on installing them last year after a string of break-ins in our neighborhood. Babe? Brandon's voice called from inside the room, groggy from pain medication. You still here? I swallowed hard and pasted on a smile before pushing open the door. He looked vulnerable lying there, his dark hair messy against the white pillow, his normally athletic frame diminished by the hospital gown. His leg, broken in 3 places according to the X-rays, was suspended in traction. He'd told me he'd tripped over equipment at the gym during an early morning workout. Now I wondered if that was even true. I'm here, I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. He smiled that crooked smile that used to make my heart skip. Now it just made me feel sick. The pain meds are helping though. Come sit with me. I moved to the chair beside his bed, my purse clutched tightly in my lap. The note felt like it was glowing through the leather, visible to anyone who looked. But Brandon just reached for my hand, his grip weak but warm. You're the best for staying with me, he said. I know this messes up your work schedule. It's fine, I lied. I'd cancelled 3 important client meetings to be here. I ran my own marketing consulting firm, and this week was supposed to be crucial for landing a new account. But when the hospital called to say my husband was in surgery, nothing else had mattered. Now I wondered if I should have stayed at work. Brandon's eyes were already drifting closed again, the medication pulling him under. I watched his face, searching for signs of deception, but all I saw was the man I'd woken up next to for nearly a decade. How could this be the same person who was apparently sneaking someone into our home? My phone buzzed in my purse. A text from my assistant, Brittany, hope Brandon is okay. Don't worry about the office. I've got everything covered. I typed back a quick thank you, my thumbs moving automatically while my mind spun. I needed to get home. I needed to check those cameras. But I also needed to maintain normalcy, to not let on that anything had changed. If there was something to find, I wanted to find it on my own terms, with clear eyes and a plan. I should go home and grab a few things, I said softly, more to myself than to Brandon since he was already asleep. I'll come back tonight. He didn't stir. I stood carefully, gathering my coat and purse. At the door, I paused and looked back at him one last time. Part of me hoped the nurse was wrong, that this was all some terrible misunderstanding. But the other part, the part that was already calculating and planning, knew in my gut that my life was about to change completely. The walk to the parking garage felt endless. My heels clicked against concrete, echoing in the stairwell. I'd worn my navy blue business suit this morning, professional and put together, a costume of the successful woman I'd worked so hard to become. Now it felt like armor I'd need for a battle I hadn't known was coming. My car, a silver sedan Brandon had surprised me with for my last birthday, sat in spot B7. I slid into the driver's seat and locked the doors immediately, suddenly feeling exposed. The parking garage was mostly empty at midday, just a few scattered vehicles and the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. I pulled out the note again and read it 3 more times, searching for meaning in every word. He brings her when you're not here. When was I not home? I traveled occasionally for work. I had my book club on Thursday evenings. I volunteered at the community center on Saturday mornings. Any of those times could be when this mystery woman visited my house, slept in my bed, sat on my couch. My hands clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned pale. The rage came in a wave so powerful it left me breathless. Not just at Brandon, but at myself. How had I missed this? What signs had I ignored? I thought of the late nights he'd claimed were work dinners, the weekends he'd spent at the office. Had any of that been real? The drive home took 20 minutes through midday traffic. I lived in a quiet suburb with tree-lined streets and houses that all looked vaguely the same. Ours was a 2-story colonial with blue shutters and a garden I'd never had time to properly maintain. Brandon had bought it 3 years ago, calling it an investment in our future. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a moment, staring at the front door. From outside, everything looked perfect. The lawn was neatly trimmed. The flowers I'd planted last spring bloomed cheerfully in their beds. But now I knew that perfect facades could hide devastating truths. Inside, the house was exactly as I'd left it this morning when the hospital called. My coffee mug sat in the sink. Brandon's jacket hung on the hook by the door. Everything normal. Everything a lie. The security system panel glowed green by the front door. Brandon had set up the whole thing himself, proud of his technical skills. We had cameras at the front door, back door, and living room. All accessible through an app on our phones. I'd barely looked at the app in months. Why would I? I'd trusted my husband completely. I dropped my purse on the counter and pulled out my phone with shaking hands. The security app icon looked innocent enough, a little house with a shield over it. Protection. Safety. Now it would show me the truth I'd been blind to. But before I opened it, I stopped. I needed to be smart about this. If there was evidence of an affair, I couldn't confront Brandon in anger. I needed documentation. I needed a lawyer. I needed a plan. I went to my home office, a small room we'd converted from a guest bedroom, and opened my laptop. First, I searched for divorce attorneys in the area. Then I created a new folder on my desktop titled Financial Review 2024, and made sure it was password protected. Whatever I found on those cameras would go in there, along with any other evidence I discovered. My phone sat on the desk, the security app still unopened. My heart hammered in my chest. Part of me wanted to remain in ignorance, to pretend the note had never happened. But I'd never been the kind of person who could ignore truth, no matter how painful. I picked up my phone and opened the app. The interface showed 3 camera feeds. I selected the living room camera first and scrolled back through the footage to last Tuesday, a day I'd been out of town for a client presentation. The timestamp showed 9:47 p.m. On the screen, I watched my husband walk into our living room. He wasn't alone. A woman with long red hair wearing a green dress followed him, laughing at something he'd said. He pulled her close and kissed her, right there on the couch where we'd watched movies together just last weekend. I watched in numb silence as the scene unfolded. They didn't just kiss. They acted like a couple, comfortable and familiar. She kicked off her shoes and curled up against him. He stroked her hair. They talked and laughed, though the camera had no audio. After about an hour, they moved toward the stairs, hand in hand, heading up to our bedroom. I closed the app before I could see more. I'd seen enough. The note had been right. My husband was having an affair, and he'd been bringing this woman into our home, into our bed, probably for months. The tears came then, hot and furious, but I brushed them away angrily. I didn't have time to cry. I had work to do. I opened my laptop and began searching the bank statements I'd never bothered to check closely before. If he was having an affair, there would be other signs. Hotels. Restaurants. Gifts. And I was going to find every single one. I spent the rest of that afternoon in my office chair, barely moving except to make coffee. The camera footage became my obsession. I scrolled through days and weeks of recordings, each new discovery cutting deeper than the last. The woman's name, I learned from a delivery receipt I found in Brandon's email, was Simone. She was younger than me, maybe late 20s to my 35. The footage showed her visiting at least twice a week, always during times when Brandon knew my schedule would keep me away. They'd established routines. She had her own toothbrush in our bathroom. I found that little detail in a video from 3 weeks ago when she'd stayed over on a Wednesday night, one of my book club evenings. She'd walked around our home like she owned it, comfortable and confident, wearing one of Brandon's shirts. My hands shook as I downloaded each video, saving them to my encrypted folder. Evidence. I needed evidence for the divorce attorney I'd already called and made an appointment with for tomorrow morning. The financial records told their own story. Brandon had been careful, but not careful enough. He'd used our joint credit card for most of their outings, probably thinking I'd never checked the statements closely. Dinner at Romano's, the expensive Italian place downtown. A weekend at the Riverside Hotel. Flowers from Bloom and Petals, except I'd never received any flowers in months. The charges went back 2 years. 2 years. That meant this affair had started shortly after my business really took off, when I'd begun traveling more and working longer hours. Had he felt neglected? Was this somehow my fault? No. I stopped that thought immediately. Nothing I'd done justified betrayal. If he'd been unhappy, he should have talked to me, not sneaked another woman into our home. I pulled up our text message history on my phone, reading through months of conversations with new eyes. His messages had seemed normal at the time. Miss you, babe. Can't wait till you're home. Love you. But now each word felt like another lie, another manipulation. There was a message from just last week, working late again tonight. Don't wait up. The timestamp showed he'd sent it at 7:15 p.m. I pulled up the camera footage from that night. At 7:45 p.m., Simone had arrived. They'd ordered takeout and eaten dinner together at our kitchen table, the same table where Brandon and I had hosted dinner parties and celebrated anniversaries. I stood up abruptly, needing to move, to do something physical with the rage building inside me. I walked through our house, seeing everything differently now. The couch where they'd cuddled. The kitchen where they'd cooked together. The bedroom I couldn't even bring myself to enter. How many times had he lied to my face? How many times had I kissed him goodbye, trusting him completely, while he counted down the minutes until I left so he could call her over? My phone rang. Brandon's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering, forcing my voice to sound normal. Hey, I said. How are you feeling? Better. The doctor just came by. They might let me go home in a couple days if the swelling goes down. He sounded cheerful, like this was good news we should celebrate together. Did you talk to your mom about maybe staying with us for a bit? I'm going to need help getting around. My mother. He wanted my mother to come take care of him while he recovered. The audacity was stunning. I'll call her, I lied smoothly. Listen, I need to handle some work stuff tonight. I probably won't make it back to the hospital until tomorrow. There was a pause. Really? I thought you'd cleared your schedule. Something came up with a client. You know how it is. Two could play at the lying game. Okay, babe. I miss you though. Get some rest. I ended the call before he could say he loved me. I couldn't bear to hear those words right now. I went back to my office and opened my laptop. Time to find a lawyer. I searched for the best divorce attorneys in the state, reading reviews and checking credentials. I needed someone tough, someone who wouldn't let Brandon manipulate or charm his way out of the consequences. The name Candace Roberts kept appearing in searches. She had a reputation for being fierce in court and protective of her clients. Her website showed a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an impressive win record. I filled out her contact form, marked it urgent, and hit send. Then I started going through every drawer in Brandon's home office, looking for more evidence. His laptop sat on his desk, unlocked since he'd left for the gym yesterday morning in such a hurry. I opened his email and began reading. The messages to Simone were explicit. He'd saved them in a folder labeled Gym Membership, thinking I'd never look. They'd been planning a future together. In one email from 3 months ago, he'd written, "Just need to figure out the right time to tell her. I don't want to hurt her, but we can't keep doing this forever." He didn't want to hurt me. The words would have been funny if they weren't so devastating. He'd been planning to leave me. This wasn't just an affair. He'd been building a whole separate life, waiting for the right moment to blow up our marriage. I printed every email, every text I could access, every receipt. The printer hummed steadily as page after page emerged, building a stack of evidence that would be impossible to deny or explain away. My phone buzzed with a text from Brittany, client called. They want to move the meeting to next week. I told them you had a family emergency. Hope that's okay. Perfect, I texted back. Thanks for handling things. Of course. Is everything really okay? I stared at her question. Brittany had worked for me for 3 years. She'd been to my house for holiday parties. She knew Brandon. Should I tell her? But no, not yet. Not until I had everything in place. Will be soon, I replied. As evening fell, I realized I hadn't eaten all day. My stomach felt hollow, but the thought of food made me nauseous. Instead, I made more coffee and continued my investigation. Brandon's phone records revealed constant calls to one number. I ran it through a reverse lookup and confirmed it belonged to Simone Patterson. She worked as a dental hygienist at a practice 3 blocks from Brandon's office. They'd probably met when he'd gone in for a cleaning. Such an ordinary beginning to such massive betrayal. I found her social media profiles easily. She was pretty in a conventional way, with that red hair and a bright smile in every photo. Her page was public, filled with pictures of brunches with girlfriends and beach vacations. In several recent photos, I spotted familiar backgrounds. The Riverside Hotel where Brandon had charged a weekend stay. The hiking trail near our house where he'd claimed to go running alone. She'd been documenting their relationship publicly, just carefully avoiding Brandon's face in the photos. But I recognized his hands in one picture, his watch in another. She'd posted them like trophies, little hints of her secret romance. My phone rang again. This time it was my best friend, Tasha. We'd known each other since college and talked at least twice a week. I almost didn't answer, but she'd know something was wrong if I avoided her. "Hey girl," she said when I picked up. "How's Brandon doing? I heard about his accident." "He's fine. Should be home in a few days." "That's good. You sound weird though. Everything okay?" I looked at the stacks of evidence surrounding me, the frozen frame on my computer screen showing my husband kissing another woman in my living room. "Can I call you tomorrow? I'm dealing with some work stuff." "Sure. But seriously, if you need anything." "I know. Thanks, Tasha." After we hung up, I let myself cry for exactly 5 minutes. I set a timer on my phone and allowed the grief and rage to pour out in harsh, ugly sobs. When the timer went off, I washed my face with cold water and went back to work. I needed to understand the full scope of this betrayal. I checked our joint savings account and found several large withdrawals over the past year, each marked as business expenses. Except Brandon worked in sales at a pharmaceutical company. All his actual business expenses were reimbursed. These withdrawals, totaling over $40,000, had gone somewhere else. I created a spreadsheet, documenting every suspicious charge, every withdrawal, every lie I could prove. By midnight, I had a file that would make any divorce attorney happy. Evidence of infidelity, financial deception, and systematic lying over a period of 2 years. My appointment with Candace Roberts was at 9 the next morning. I packed everything into a folder, backed up all the digital files to a secure cloud account, and finally allowed myself to go to bed. Except I couldn't sleep in our bedroom. I couldn't lie in the bed where he'd brought her. Instead, I grabbed a blanket and pillow and lay down on the couch in my office, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, I would start the process of ending my marriage. Tomorrow, I would begin the legal battle to extricate myself from a life built on lies. But tonight, I just let myself feel the weight of what I'd lost. Not Brandon, I realized. I'd lost him a long time ago, probably 2 years ago when he'd made the choice to betray me. What I'd lost was the future I'd thought we were building together. The children we'd talked about having. The life we'd planned to create. All of it had been a fantasy, at least for him. While I'd been working hard to build our future, he'd been planning his exit, just waiting for the right moment to leave me behind. Well, he wouldn't get the chance. I was done waiting. I was done being the trusting wife who believed every lie. Tomorrow morning, I was going to take control of my life again, starting with walking into that attorney's office and filing for divorce. Let him explain to his family, his friends, his colleagues why his wife was leaving him. Let Simone deal with the reality of dating a divorced man who'd cheated on his wife instead of having the excitement of being the secret girlfriend. Let Brandon face the consequences of his choices. I was going to make sure this divorce cost him everything. Candace Roberts' office was in a sleek downtown building with glass walls and modern furniture. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a red business suit, my evidence folder clutched against my chest like armor. The receptionist, a young man with kind eyes, offered me coffee and a seat in the waiting area. I declined the coffee. My hands were already shaking from too much caffeine and too little sleep. At exactly 9 o'clock, Candace emerged from her office. She was taller than I'd expected, with steel gray hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that seemed to assess everything in seconds. "Mrs. Sterling." She extended her hand. "Come in, please." Her office was immaculate, all clean lines and leather furniture. She gestured to a chair across from her massive desk and sat down, pulling out a legal pad. "Tell me what's going on," she said simply. I placed the folder on her desk and began talking. Once I started, I couldn't stop. The words poured out, all the details I'd discovered yesterday, the 2 years of lies, the camera footage, the financial records. Candace took notes steadily, her expression never changing, though I saw her eyebrows rise slightly when I mentioned the amount of money Brandon had spent on his affair. When I finally finished, she sat back in her chair and studied me carefully. "You've done excellent work documenting everything. Most clients come to me with suspicions but very little proof. You've handed me a case that's almost impossible to dispute. I want this done quickly, I said. And I want him to pay for what he's done. Understandable. Let's talk strategy. She pulled out several documents and spread them on the desk. First question, do you have a prenuptial agreement? Yes. We signed one before we got married. My business was just starting to take off, and my father insisted on it. Thank you, Dad, I thought silently. He'd passed away 5 years ago, but his practical advice was still protecting me. Excellent. Do you have a copy? In my safe at home. Get it to me today. If it's well written, it will protect your business and any assets you brought into the marriage. She made a note. Next question, do you own your home jointly? The house is in both our names, but I've been making most of the mortgage payments from my business account. Brandon contributes, but my income is triple his. Candace smiled for the first time. Even better. With evidence of his affair and your financial contribution, we can argue you should keep the house. Now, what do you want from this divorce? I'd thought about this all night. I want the house. I want to keep my business completely separate. I want him to understand that cheating has consequences. No interest in reconciliation. None. Good. Women who come in here hoping their spouse will change waste everyone's time and money. She pulled out another form. I'm going to file the papers today. Given the evidence you've provided, we'll argue for an expedited process. With his infidelity clearly documented, and assuming he doesn't want this dragged through court where all his friends and family will learn the details, he'll likely agree to a quick settlement. What about the money he spent on her? Can I get that back? We can certainly try. We'll argue he misused marital funds for an extramarital affair. Judges tend to look unfavorably on that. She leaned forward. Mrs. Sterling, I need you to understand something. This is going to get difficult. Your husband will likely try to manipulate you, convince you to change your mind. His family may pressure you. Are you prepared for that? Absolutely. Then let's get started. She stood and extended her hand again. I'll have papers ready to file by end of business today. My process server will deliver them to your husband tomorrow. Where is he currently? Memorial Hospital, room 304. He broke his leg. Candace's eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement. Well, he certainly can't run away. That makes service easier. I left her office feeling stronger than I had in 24 hours. Having Candace on my side felt like having a weapon, a shield, protection against whatever Brandon would throw at me when he learned I knew the truth. My next stop was the bank. I'd called ahead and scheduled an appointment with the branch manager. If Brandon had been taking money from our joint account, I needed to protect what was left. The manager, Patricia Green, was a woman in her 50s who'd helped us set up our accounts years ago. She greeted me warmly, then grew serious when I explained I was filing for divorce. I need to know exactly what's in our joint accounts and what options I have for protecting my share, I told her. Patricia pulled up our account information. You have $73,000 in your joint savings, another $12,000 in joint checking. Your business accounts are separate, which is good. Can he withdraw money from the joint accounts right now? Yes, either of you has full access. But. She paused, choosing her words carefully. If you're concerned about him draining the accounts, I can flag them. Any withdrawal over $5,000 would require both signatures. It's not perfect protection, but it buys time. Do it. She typed something into her computer. Done. I've also made a note in the account that there's pending divorce litigation. If he tries to close the accounts or make major changes, I'll contact you immediately. Thank you, Patricia. I'm sorry you're going through this, she said quietly. I always thought you two seemed so happy. So had I. That was the problem with betrayal. It made you question every memory, every moment you believed was real. From the bank, I drove to my office. I'd been avoiding it since Brandon's accident, but I needed normalcy. I needed to remember who I was outside of being a betrayed wife. My firm occupied the second floor of a renovated warehouse downtown. I'd started it 6 years ago with 2 clients and a dream. Now I had a team of 8 employees, 15 major clients, and a reputation as one of the best marketing consultants in the region. Brittany looked up from her desk when I walked in. "Boss. You're here. I thought you were taking the week off. Change of plans. Is everyone in? Team meeting in 20 minutes, actually." "Perfect." I went to my office and closed the door, looking out the window at the city below. This business was mine. I'd built it through long hours and hard work, through pitching clients and delivering results. Brandon had contributed nothing to it except occasionally complaining that I worked too much. Well, now he'd see what I could accomplish when I wasn't distracted by a lying husband. My phone buzzed. A text from Brandon, "Hey babe, when are you coming by? Getting bored here." I stared at the message. He had no idea what was coming. Tomorrow, a process server would walk into his hospital room and hand him divorce papers. Tomorrow, his comfortable world would implode. Later, I texted back. "Busy with work." The team meeting went smoothly. We discussed ongoing projects, new client prospects, and quarterly goals. My employees had no idea anything was wrong in my personal life, and I planned to keep it that way until absolutely necessary. After the meeting, I pulled Brittany aside. "Can you clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks? Handle whatever you can, postpone everything else." "Sure. Everything okay? Personal stuff. I'll fill you in when I can." She studied my face with concern but didn't push. "You got it." That afternoon, I went back home and continued my investigation. I'd been so focused on the camera footage and financial records that I hadn't thoroughly searched Brandon's belongings. Now I went through everything systematically. His closet revealed receipts in jacket pockets. His nightstand drawer contained a second phone I'd never seen before. When I turned it on, it was filled with messages to Simone, photos of them together, intimate texts that made my stomach turn. I photographed everything and added it to my evidence file. Each discovery felt like another stab, but I kept my emotions locked down tight. Time to fall apart later. Right now, I needed to be thorough. In Brandon's desk, I found a file folder labeled "Private." Inside were documents for a condo he'd been looking at purchasing. The address was on the other side of town, in a trendy neighborhood near the river. The listing sheet was dated 3 months ago, and there were handwritten notes in Brandon's handwriting: "Good investment. S will love the view. S. Simone." He'd been planning to buy them a place together. Using marital funds, probably from those suspicious withdrawals I'd found yesterday. I photographed everything and called Candace immediately. "Found more evidence," I told her. He was planning to buy a condo. For him and his girlfriend. "Send me everything. This keeps getting better and better from our perspective." Her tone was clinical, professional, but I could hear the satisfaction underneath. She liked winning, and Brandon was making it very easy for her. That evening, my mother called. "Honey, Brandon's mother just phoned me. She said he's in the hospital and wants to know if I can come help with his recovery." "What happened?" I closed my eyes. Of course Brandon had called my mother. He always knew how to manipulate through family connections. My mother adored him, called him the son she'd never had. He broke his leg at the gym. "But Mom, I need to tell you something." I explained everything. The camera footage, the affair, the lies. My mother listened in silence, and when I finished, she let out a long breath. "Oh honey. I'm so sorry. What do you need from me?" "Just support. His family is going to be upset when they find out about the divorce. They might try to get you to convince me to reconsider. They can try all they want. You're my daughter. If you say he betrayed you, I believe you." Her voice was fierce, protective. "When are you telling him?" "Tomorrow. The divorce papers are being served." "Good. Want me to come stay with you for a few days?" "Not yet. I need to do this part alone. But soon, okay? I'm here whenever you need me. And sweetheart, you're going to be fine. You're the strongest person I know." After we hung up, I finally let myself cry again. But this time, the tears weren't just from grief. They were from gratitude for having people in my corner, for having a mother who supported me unconditionally. I spent the rest of the evening preparing for tomorrow. I packed a bag with some of Brandon's clothes and toiletries to bring to the hospital. When he was discharged, he wouldn't be coming back to this house. Candace had advised me to change the locks immediately after serving papers, which I'd scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. I also drafted an email to our friends, explaining in simple terms that Brandon and I were divorcing due to his affair. I wouldn't send it until after he'd been served, but I wanted it ready. I refused to let him control the narrative or paint himself as the victim. That night, I slept in the guest room again, still unable to face our bedroom. Tomorrow would be the beginning of my new life. Tomorrow, I would stop being Brandon's betrayed wife and start being simply myself again. And honestly, I couldn't wait. I arrived at the hospital at 2 in the afternoon, well dressed in a green suit with my hair pulled back in a neat bun. I'd timed it perfectly. According to Candace's text, the process server would arrive at 2:15. Brandon's face lit up when I walked into his room. "There you are. I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me." "Never," I said, settling into the chair by his bed. "How are you feeling today?" "Much better. Doctor says I can go home tomorrow if everything looks good." He reached for my hand, and I let him take it, studying his face like I was seeing him for the first time. He looked the same. Same dark eyes, same slight stubble on his jaw, same familiar features I'd woken up to for 8 years. But now I knew what those eyes had hidden, what lies that mouth had told. He was a stranger wearing my husband's face. "That's great news," I said. "I brought you some things from home. Fresh clothes, your phone charger. You're the best, babe." He squeezed my hand. "I know this has been hard on you. Missing work, running back and forth. I appreciate it. Do you?" The question came out before I could stop it, sharper than I'd intended. He looked confused. "Of course I do. You know how much you mean to me." I was saved from having to respond by a knock on the door. A young man in a business suit stepped in, looking professional and slightly uncomfortable. "Brandon Sterling?" he asked. "Yes." Brandon glanced at me, then back at the stranger. "Who are you?" "I'm a process server. I have documents for you." He approached the bed and held out a manila envelope. The confusion on Brandon's face would have been funny in different circumstances. He took the envelope slowly, like it might bite him. "What is this?" "Divorce papers," the man said matter-of-factly. "You've been served. Have a good day." He left quickly. Brandon stared at the envelope, then at me, his expression shifting from confusion to shock to something that might have been fear. "What the hell is this?" His voice rose. "This is a joke, right? Some kind of prank?" "It's not a joke." I pulled my hand away from his and stood up, putting distance between us. "Open it." He ripped open the envelope with shaking hands and pulled out the papers. I watched his eyes scan the first page, saw the exact moment he realized this was real. The color drained from his face. "You're filing for divorce?" "Why?" "We're happy. We're..." He trailed off, looking up at me with something like desperation. "I don't understand." "Really?" I pulled out my phone and opened the security camera app. I'd queued up one of the videos from last month. I held the phone up so he could see the screen clearly. His face on the footage, kissing Simone in our living room. Brandon's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. That's... I can explain. Don't. My voice was cold, controlled. I'd practiced this moment in my head a dozen times. I've seen all the footage, Brandon. Months of it. I've read the emails, the texts from your second phone. I know about the condo you were planning to buy with her. I know everything. It's not what it looks like. He grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. Please, just let me explain. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake. It didn't mean anything. I pulled my arm free. 2 years isn't a mistake. It's a choice. You chose her over me, every single time you brought her into our home. I love you. You have to believe that. I never stopped loving you. If you loved me, you wouldn't have lied to my face for 2 years. If you loved me, you wouldn't have planned a future with someone else while pretending to build one with me. I picked up my purse. Sign the papers, Brandon. Don't fight this. Because I have enough evidence to destroy you in court, and I will use every bit of it if you make this difficult. Wait. He tried to get out of bed but winced in pain, his broken leg preventing him from following me. Please, we can work through this. Couples therapy. Whatever you want. Just don't throw away 8 years of marriage. You already threw it away. I reached the door and paused, looking back at him one last time. The locks will be changed by tonight. Your mother's address is listed as your forwarding address on the papers. I'm sure she'll be happy to take you in once you're discharged. You can't do this. His voice cracked. This is my house too. Actually, read page 7 of the divorce petition. With the evidence of your affair and the fact that I've been making the majority of the mortgage payments, my attorney is confident I'll be awarded the house. But we can let a judge decide if you want to take this to court. I opened the door. A nurse stood just outside, clearly having heard the shouting. She gave me a sympathetic look. Oh, and Brandon? I turned back one more time. The head nurse who slipped me the note about the cameras. You should probably stop harassing the hospital staff. They don't appreciate being hit on by married men. I walked away to the sound of him calling my name, his voice echoing down the hospital corridor. But I didn't look back. I was done looking back. In my car, I sat for a moment, letting my hands shake, letting the adrenaline drain away. I'd done it. I'd confronted him. And I'd felt powerful. Not weak or heartbroken or lost. Powerful. My phone buzzed with a text from Candace. How'd it go? Perfect. He tried to deny everything, then begged for another chance. I showed him the video. Good. He'll probably contact you tonight with more excuses. Don't respond. Let him talk to your lawyer. Understood. My next stop was the locksmith. I'd already arranged for him to meet me at the house at 4. Sure enough, when I pulled into the driveway, his van was waiting. You the lady who needs the locks changed? He was an older man with a kind face and tool belt slung around his waist. That's me. Every door. Front, back, garage, everything. Got it. This'll take about an hour. I went inside while he worked and systematically went through every room, removing anything of Brandon's that I wanted out of the house immediately. His clothes went into trash bags. His toiletries, his books, his collection of baseball memorabilia. Everything went into the garage in neat piles that I'd have his brother pick up tomorrow. Our bedroom was the hardest. I stood in the doorway for a long moment before entering. The bed where he'd brought Simone. The nightstand where he'd kept his secret phone. Every surface felt contaminated. I stripped the bed completely, stuffing the sheets and comforter into garbage bags. Those wouldn't be donated. Those would be thrown away. Then I started on his side of the closet, pulling down shirts and suits and ties. There was a photo on his dresser, one of us from our wedding day. We looked so young, so happy. I'd believed in forever that day. I'd believed in him. I threw the photo in the trash. By the time the locksmith finished, I'd cleared out every trace of Brandon from the main living areas. The house felt empty but clean, like I'd removed a stain that had been spreading through every room. All done, ma'am. The locksmith handed me a set of new keys. Changed every lock. Your ex won't be getting in without your permission. Ex-husband, I corrected. Thank you. After he left, I went through the house and locked every door with the new keys, testing them. Then I sat on my living room couch, in the spot where I'd watched Brandon kiss Simone on camera, and felt the weight of the day finally hit me. My phone rang. Brandon's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. I turned off the ringer and watched as he called 6 more times in a row before finally stopping. Then the text started coming in rapid succession. Please answer. We need to talk. You can't really want this. You're angry, I get it, but we can fix this. Think about everything we've built together. Don't throw it all away. She means nothing to me. You're my wife. Please. Why won't you answer? Just talk to me. I blocked his number. Instantly, my phone was silent. Peaceful. An hour later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I debated answering, then decided to pick up just in case it was something important. Hello. You destroyed my family, you know that? A woman's voice, high-pitched and angry. Brandon's mother. How could you do this to him while he's hurt and vulnerable? I took a deep breath. Did he tell you why I'm divorcing him? He said you're being irrational. That you found some text messages that you're misinterpreting. He had an affair for 2 years. I have video footage of him bringing his girlfriend into our home. Multiple videos. Bank records showing he spent over $40,000 on her. Emails where they planned their future together. Silence on the other end. I'm sorry he didn't tell you the truth, I continued, keeping my voice calm. But I'm not the villain here. Your son betrayed his marriage vows repeatedly and deliberately. If you want to be angry at someone, be angry at him. There must be some explanation. But her voice had lost its conviction. There is. He cheated. And now he's facing the consequences. I paused. I've arranged for his belongings to be at your house tomorrow. His brother can pick them up from my garage anytime after 10. Please don't call me again. I hung up before she could respond and immediately blocked that number too. My mother called an hour later. How are you holding up, honey? Surprisingly okay, I admitted. I confronted him at the hospital. He tried to lie, then tried to beg for another chance. What did you say? I told him to sign the papers and left. I looked around my empty house. I'm changing everything, Mom. New locks. New sheets. New life. That's my girl. Want me to come over? We could order takeout, watch terrible movies. Actually, yes. That sounds perfect. She arrived an hour later with Chinese food and a bottle of wine. We sat on my couch, eating moo shu pork and watching romantic comedies, making fun of every unrealistic plot point. You know what's crazy? I said during a commercial break. I feel lighter. Like I've been carrying around this weight I didn't even know was there. That's what living with a lie does to you, my mother said. Even when you don't consciously know something's wrong, your body knows. Your spirit knows. I keep waiting to feel devastated. Shouldn't I be sobbing? Eating ice cream from the container? Listening to sad songs? Maybe that comes later. Or maybe you already did your grieving while you were with him, every time he lied to you. She squeezed my hand. There's no right way to go through this, honey. You feel what you feel. That night, after my mother left, I did something I'd been avoiding. I went into my bedroom and really looked at it. This had been my space, my sanctuary. I refused to let Brandon and his betrayal take that from me. I spent the next 3 hours redecorating. I moved furniture, changed the curtains, rearranged everything until the room looked completely different. I ordered a new bed online, along with new bedding in colors Brandon would have hated. Bright coral and turquoise instead of the boring beige he preferred. By midnight, I was exhausted but satisfied. The room felt like mine now, not ours. Just mine. I fell asleep that night without crying, without rage, without regret. Just a quiet acceptance that this chapter was closing and a new one was beginning. And honestly, I was ready. The next week brought a storm of phone calls, texts from unknown numbers, and angry visits from Brandon's family members. His brother, Preston, showed up at my office on Wednesday morning, demanding to speak with me. Brittany intercepted him at the door. "I'm sorry, but she's in a meeting." "I'll wait." He planted himself in the waiting area, arms crossed over his chest. I watched through my office window as he sat there, glaring at anyone who walked by. Finally, I had Brittany tell him I'd give him 5 minutes. He stormed into my office, his face red with anger. "You're destroying him. You know that?" "Sit down, Preston." I kept my voice level, professional. "He's devastated. He made one mistake and you're throwing away your whole marriage. One mistake that lasted 2 years. I leaned back in my chair. "Did he tell you he was planning to leave me? That he was looking at condos to buy for him and his girlfriend?" Preston's anger flickered, replaced briefly by confusion. "That's not what he said." "I'm sure it's not. Brandon is very good at telling people what they want to hear. It's how he maintained a double life for so long." I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the videos. "This is your brother bringing another woman into the house I pay for, sleeping in the bed I sleep in. Still think this is one mistake?" He watched the video, and I saw the moment his certainty crumbled. "He said you were exaggerating. That you found some flirty texts and overreacted. He lied to you. Just like he lied to me for 2 years." I took my phone back. I have hours of video footage, thousands of dollars in receipts, explicit emails and texts. Your brother didn't make a mistake. He built an entire second life. Preston sat down heavily in the chair across from me. "I didn't know. Most people don't. That's how affairs work." I felt a flicker of sympathy for him. It wasn't his fault his brother was a liar. "Look, I know you love your brother. But this isn't something I can forgive or forget. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. My mom is a wreck. She keeps saying there must be some way to fix this. There isn't. The marriage is over. Brandon can either sign the papers and make this quick and relatively painless, or he can drag it out and make it expensive and public. But either way, we're getting divorced." Preston left looking deflated. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. That afternoon, Candace called with an update. "Your husband has retained Gerald Murphy as his attorney. Is that good or bad?" "Murphy is competent but not particularly aggressive. More importantly, I've been in contact with him. Your husband wants to negotiate." "Negotiate what?" "Everything is pretty clear-cut. He's requesting the proceeds from the sale of the house be split evenly. He also wants half your retirement accounts." I could hear the smile in her voice. I told Murphy he could request whatever he wanted, but given the evidence we have, no judge would grant it. "What do you think he'll actually get?" "Honestly? Not much. His affair is well documented. He spent marital funds on his mistress. You've been the primary breadwinner. If he's smart, he'll take whatever small settlement we offer and walk away quietly. And if he's not smart, then we go to court, and all of this becomes public record. His employer will find out. His friends, his family, everyone will know exactly what he did. Most people prefer to avoid that scenario. Keep me updated. Will do. Oh, and one more thing. He's been calling the office. My staff has instructions not to put him through to you, but be aware he's trying to make contact. After we hung up, I pulled up my blocked messages. Sure enough, Brandon had been texting from new numbers, trying different approaches. From one number, "I'm in therapy now. Working on understanding why I made such terrible choices. Please give me a chance to show you I can change." From another, "We were together 8 years. Doesn't that count for something? You're really going to throw away almost a decade?" From yet another, "Simone means nothing. I've told her it's over. It's always been you. Please believe me." I deleted all of them without responding. Candace had been clear, no contact except through lawyers. My best friend Tasha came over that evening with takeout and moral support. I'd filled her in on everything over the phone, but this was the first time we'd seen each other since Brandon's accident. "You look good," she said, studying my face. "I expected you to be a mess, but you seem fine." "I am fine. Is that weird?" "Honestly? A little. I mean, your husband cheated on you for 2 years. You're divorcing. Most people would be falling apart." I thought about it while we ate pad thai from the containers. I think I'm relieved more than anything. Like, my gut was telling me something was wrong for months, maybe years, but I kept pushing it down. Now I know I wasn't crazy. The problem wasn't me. "Did you suspect?" Tasha asked gently. "Not consciously. But looking back, there were signs. He was always on his phone. He picked fights about nothing, probably to justify pulling away. He stopped wanting to make plans for our future." I set down my fork. And the sex had become mechanical. Like he was going through the motions but wasn't really present. "I'm sorry you went through that. The weird thing is, I'm not even that angry at Simone. I mean, she knew he was married, so that's awful. But Brandon made vows to me. She didn't. This is on him." Tasha raised her wine glass. "To new beginnings and dumping cheating husbands." We clinked glasses and drank. "So what happens now?" she asked. "I wait for him to agree to the settlement terms. I redecorate. I focus on work. I remember who I was before I became Mrs. Brandon Sterling. Any interest in dating?" "God no." I laughed. "Maybe eventually, but right now? I need to remember how to be alone without feeling lonely. I need to figure out who I am as just myself." Over the next few days, more people reached out. Some of our mutual friends, confused about what had happened. I'd sent the email I'd prepared, explaining briefly that Brandon had an affair and we were divorcing. Most people responded with shock and support. A few took his side, claiming I must have done something to drive him to it. I blocked those people without a second thought. Anyone who believed infidelity was justified because a spouse wasn't perfect wasn't worth my time or energy. On Friday, exactly 1 week after serving Brandon with papers, Candace called with news. "He's agreed to most of our terms. You keep the house, your business remains entirely yours, retirement account stays separate. He gets his personal belongings, his car, and a small settlement of $15,000. That's it." I'd expected him to fight harder. Murphy advised him that going to court would be expensive and public, and he'd likely end up with even less. "Your husband may be a cheater, but he's not stupid enough to drag this out when he's clearly in the wrong. So it's over." Almost. We still need to finalize paperwork, get a judge's signature. But barring any last-minute changes of heart, you should be legally divorced in about 8 weeks. 8 weeks. 2 months. And then I'd be free. That weekend, I met with a real estate agent about refinancing the house solely in my name. I met with my accountant to make sure all my business finances were completely separate. I changed my will, my insurance beneficiary, every legal document that had Brandon's name on it. Each change felt like closing a door on the past and opening a window to the future. Sunday afternoon, I was in my garage boxing up the last of Brandon's belongings when a car pulled into my driveway. A red sedan I didn't recognize. The door opened and a woman stepped out. Simone. She was prettier in person than in the videos, with her red hair shining in the afternoon sun. She wore jeans and a green sweater and looked nervous as she approached. "I don't think you should be here," I said calmly, though my heart was racing. "I know. I needed to talk to you." She stopped a few feet away, wrapping her arms around herself. "I'm sorry. For everything. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it." "Why?" I set down the box I'd been holding. "Why did you need to tell me you're sorry? To make yourself feel better?" "No. I mean, maybe partially. But also because you deserve to know that I understand what I did was wrong." She took a deep breath. "Brandon told me you two were separated. That you were just living together until he found a new place. I believed him for the first few months. And then I realized he was lying. About a lot of things. But by that point, I was." She trailed off, looking ashamed. "I was in too deep. I thought I loved him. I thought eventually he'd actually leave you. He was planning to. I found the paperwork for the condo he wanted to buy." Her eyes widened. "He showed me that place. Told me it was an investment property." Despite everything, I almost felt bad for her. She'd been lied to as well, just in different ways. Sounds like Brandon was playing both of us. "He called me last week. Told me everything was my fault. That you'd found out and now his life was ruined because of me." She laughed bitterly. "Like I was the one who chose to cheat on his wife." "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Forgiveness? I can't give you that. Understanding? Maybe a little. You're not the first woman to be lied to by a married man, and you won't be the last. I don't want anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that it's over between Brandon and me. Completely. Good luck," I said simply. "You're going to need better judgment in men." She left without another word, getting back in her car and driving away. I watched her go, feeling nothing but a vague sense of pity. She'd thought she was getting the fairy tale, the successful man who would leave his wife and choose her. Instead, she'd been a side piece to a liar. I went back to packing Brandon's things, but my mind was elsewhere. In just a few weeks, this would all be over. The divorce would be final. I'd be single again for the first time in nearly a decade. And I realized something surprising: I was excited. Not scared or sad or worried about being alone. Excited. Because being alone had to be better than being with someone who made you feel lonely. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother: "Dinner tonight? Want to celebrate new beginnings?" "Perfect," I texted back. "I'll bring wine." That evening, sitting at my mother's kitchen table eating her famous pot roast, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Content. Genuinely, simply content. "You're smiling," my mother observed. "A real smile, not the fake ones you've been wearing for the past few years." Was I that obvious? To me, yes. A mother knows when her child isn't happy, even when they're trying to hide it. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, honey. Not everyone has the strength to walk away from a marriage, even when staying would be easier. Easier maybe, but not better." Exactly. You chose yourself. That takes courage. We finished dinner and moved to her living room, drinking wine and talking about everything except Brandon. My mother told me about her book club drama, her neighbor's new puppy, her plans to finally take that trip to Italy she'd been talking about for years. Normal conversation. Easy conversation. The kind I hadn't realized I'd been missing. When I drove home that night, I didn't feel the dread I'd been carrying for weeks. My house wasn't a reminder of betrayal anymore. It was just a house. My house. Full of possibilities for whatever came next. The boxes containing Brandon's belongings sat in my garage for 3 days before his brother finally came to collect them. I'd been at work when Preston arrived, which was probably for the best. By the time I got home, the garage was empty, and that chapter was truly closed. I stood in the empty space, breathing in the smell of concrete and dust, and felt lighter than I had in months. Every trace of Brandon was gone from my life except for the legal paperwork still being processed. Even that would be finished soon. I went inside and looked at my house with fresh eyes. It was time to make it truly mine. That weekend, I hired painters. The boring beige walls Brandon had insisted on were covered with warm terracotta in the living room, sage green in the kitchen, and soft lavender in my bedroom. I replaced the conservative furniture we'd chosen together with pieces that made me happy, bright throw pillows and interesting art and plants everywhere. My mother helped me shop, driving from store to store as I picked out rugs and lamps and decorative items that felt nothing like the sterile, magazine-perfect aesthetic Brandon had preferred. "This is fun," she said as we loaded yet another plant into her car. "I always thought your house looked like a furniture showroom, not a home." Brandon liked things minimal. Brandon liked things boring, she corrected. "Your personality was never in that house. Now I can actually see you in it." She was right. By the end of the weekend, my house felt alive, colorful, and completely mine. I could walk through each room without seeing ghosts of the past. On Monday, I threw myself back into work with renewed energy. I'd been running on autopilot for weeks, letting Brittany and my team handle most things. Now I dove back in, scheduling meetings with clients, pitching new ideas, and remembering why I'd started this business in the first place. "There you are," Brittany said when I emerged from a particularly successful pitch meeting. "I was starting to worry you'd forgotten how brilliant you are." "Just needed some time to remember," I admitted. "But I'm back now." "Good. Because we have 3 new clients wanting to meet with you, and Thompson Industries is asking if you'd be interested in consulting on their rebrand." Thompson Industries was huge, the kind of client that could put my firm on the map in a major way. "When do they want to meet?" "Tomorrow, if you're available." "Make it happen." That night, I stayed late preparing for the Thompson meeting, feeling the familiar rush of excitement that came with a challenging project. I'd missed this. I'd been so focused on being a good wife, on maintaining the perfect marriage, that I'd let my career take a back seat. No more. The Thompson meeting went even better than I'd hoped. They wanted a full rebrand, including logo redesign, marketing strategy, and social media overhaul. It was a 6-month project worth more than I'd made in the past year combined. "We're impressed with your portfolio," the CEO said. "But more than that, we're impressed with your vision. You see possibilities we hadn't considered." "That's what I do," I said confidently. "I help companies tell their story in ways that resonate with their audience." We shook hands on a verbal agreement, with contracts to follow. As I walked out of their office building, I actually laughed out loud. 6 months ago, I'd been stuck in a failing marriage, my confidence eroding under Brandon's constant subtle criticism. Now I was landing the biggest client of my career and feeling more capable than ever. My phone rang. "Candace. Good news. The divorce will be final in 2 weeks. Judge signed off on everything this morning." "That's it? It's really over?" "Almost. You'll need to come in and sign the final papers, but yes. 2 weeks and you'll officially be free." I'd expected to feel something dramatic in this moment. Relief, maybe, or sadness for the death of my marriage. Instead, I just felt ready. Ready to move forward, ready to start fresh, ready to be myself again. That evening, I met Tasha for dinner at a new restaurant downtown. I hadn't realized how much I'd pulled away from my friends during my marriage. Brandon had always made comments about girls' nights, subtle digs about me choosing friends over him. Now I understood it had been a control tactic, keeping me isolated so I'd be less likely to notice his lies. "You look different," Tasha said, studying me across the table. "Happier." "I am happier. I landed a huge client today, my divorce is almost final, and I'm rediscovering all the things I loved before I got married." "Like what?" "Like painting. I used to paint all the time in college, remember? I set up an easel in my guest room last weekend and just played around with colors. It felt amazing." "That's great. What else?" "Reading for fun instead of just business books. Taking long baths without feeling guilty about it. Eating dinner whenever I want instead of waiting for someone else's schedule. Wearing whatever I want without worrying if it's too bright or too casual or whatever other opinion Brandon had." Tasha raised her glass. "To freedom and becoming yourself again." We drank, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the wine. This was what I'd been missing. Connection. Real connection with people who supported me unconditionally. Over the next 2 weeks, I established new routines. Morning yoga classes before work. Weekly dinners with my mother. Regular meetings with Tasha. I joined a book club and a painting class at the community center. I started saying yes to opportunities instead of automatically checking if they'd conflict with Brandon's schedule. Because there was no Brandon's schedule anymore. Just mine. The day before my divorce was finalized, the head nurse who'd given me the note called. Her name was Patricia, and she asked if I'd like to meet for coffee. We met at a cafe near the hospital. She was in her late 40s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "I wanted to check on you," she said after we'd ordered. "I wasn't sure if giving you that note was the right thing to do, but I couldn't stand by and watch. You did the right thing. You saved me from wasting more years on someone who didn't deserve them. How are you doing?" "Really? Honestly? Better than I've ever been. The divorce is final tomorrow, I just landed the biggest client of my career, and I'm remembering who I was before I became someone's wife." Patricia smiled. "I'm glad. I see a lot of women stay in bad situations because leaving feels scarier than staying. It takes courage to choose yourself. Why did you help me? You didn't know me. I saw myself in you," she admitted. 20 years ago, I was married to a man who cheated. I stayed for 5 years after I found out, trying to make it work, convinced that leaving would be harder than staying. But being alone turned out to be so much better than being with someone who made me feel worthless. "How long have you been divorced?" 15 years. Best 15 years of my life." She leaned forward. "Here's what I wish someone had told me back then, being single isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. Being with the wrong person is. You chose the harder path in the short term, but you'll be so much happier in the long run." We talked for over an hour, swapping stories about rebuilding after divorce. By the time we said goodbye, we'd exchanged numbers and made plans to have coffee again next month. It felt good to have a friend who understood exactly what I'd been through. That night, I went through my house one last time, making sure there was nothing left that connected me to Brandon. I found a photo album in the back of a closet, filled with pictures from our wedding and honeymoon. For a moment, I considered keeping it, some sentimental attachment to the good memories. But then I remembered that even those good memories had been based on lies. He'd been cheating by our 5th anniversary. Had he been faithful during our honeymoon? During our wedding? I'd never know, and that uncertainty poisoned even the supposedly happy moments. I threw the album in the trash. The next morning, I went to Candace's office to sign the final paperwork. It took less than 20 minutes. My signature on a few pages, and I was officially single again. "Congratulations," Candace said, shaking my hand. You handled this whole process with remarkable grace. Most of my clients are emotional wrecks by this point. I think I'd already grieved the marriage before I even filed. Finding out about the affair was actually a relief in some weird way. It gave me permission to stop trying to fix something that was already broken. That's a healthy perspective. What's next for you? Living my life. Building my career. Finding out who I am as just myself. I smiled. And definitely staying single for a while. I need to remember how to be happy alone before I could ever consider being with someone else. Smart woman. Not everyone has that self-awareness. I left her office feeling oddly anticlimactic. I'd expected the moment of signing those papers to be more dramatic, more significant. Instead, it was just paperwork, bureaucratic proof of something I'd already moved past emotionally. I drove to my mother's house, where she'd promised to have champagne waiting. To new beginnings, she declared, popping the cork. We sat on her back porch, drinking champagne in the afternoon sunshine and talking about everything except Brandon. Your father would be proud of you, she said eventually. He always said you were the strongest person he knew. I miss him. Me too. But I think he'd be glad you had that prenup he insisted on. It made all of this so much cleaner. Dad always was practical. My phone buzzed with a text from Brittany. Thompson Industries just called. They want to move up the timeline. Can you start next week? I texted back, absolutely. Work? My mother asked. The best kind. New project, new client, new opportunities. That's my girl. We finished the champagne and ordered pizza, and I stayed for dinner, not wanting to rush home to an empty house quite yet. But when I finally did drive home, I didn't feel that emptiness I'd been bracing for. Instead, I felt possibility. My house was quiet but not lonely. My life was solo but not sad. I was single but not less than. I was just me. Finally, completely, authentically me. And that felt perfect. 3 months after my divorce was finalized, life had settled into a new rhythm. I worked long hours on the Thompson Industries rebrand, threw myself into my painting classes, and slowly rebuilt my social life. I'd stopped checking my blocked messages from Brandon. I'd stopped wondering what he was doing or whether he regretted his choices. I'd simply moved on. One Thursday evening, I was leaving my painting class at the community center when I literally bumped into Patricia, the head nurse who'd given me that fateful note at the hospital. Oh. I'm sorry, I said, grabbing her arm to steady both of us. No worries. Hey, it's you. She smiled warmly. I was just thinking I should text you. We keep saying we'll have coffee again and never following through. That's my fault. Work has been crazy. Want to grab dinner? There's a great Thai place around the corner. We ended up at a small restaurant with string lights and mismatched chairs, talking over pad CEW and spring rolls. The conversation flowed easily, jumping from work stress to funny stories to deeper discussions about life after divorce. How's your ex doing? Patricia asked. Do you hear anything about him? Not really. His brother texted me once to say Brandon was moving to another city for a job. I didn't respond. I shrugged. I hope he's figuring his life out, but honestly, it's not my problem anymore. That's a healthy attitude. It took me years to get to that place with my ex. What about you? Are you dating anyone? No, and I'm completely content with that. I've built a good life. Great job, close friends, hobbies I love. Adding someone to that equation would have to make my life better, not just different. Exactly. That's what I keep trying to explain to Tasha. She's always trying to set me up with people, but I'm not looking. I'm still figuring out who I am as just myself. Then she should respect that. Real friends support you where you are, not where they think you should be. We talked until the restaurant started closing, swapping numbers, and promising to make this a regular thing. And surprisingly, we actually followed through. Every Thursday after my painting class, Patricia and I met for dinner. It became the highlight of my week, a standing date with someone who understood my journey because she'd walked a similar path. Over the next few months, Patricia became one of my closest friends. She was funny and sharp and brutally honest in ways I needed. She called me out when I worked too much and celebrated my wins with genuine enthusiasm. She understood the complexity of rebuilding after betrayal without constantly bringing up the past. One evening, about 5 months after my divorce, we were having dinner at our usual Thai place when she mentioned a nursing conference coming up. It's in Chicago next month. 3 days of professional development and networking. I usually go alone, but it's more fun with company. Any chance you'd want to come? To a nursing conference? Well, you'd skip the actual conference sessions. But Chicago is great, and we could explore the city together in the evenings. My hospital pays for the hotel. I thought about my schedule. The Thompson project was wrapping up, and I had some flexibility before starting my next big client engagement. You know what? Why not? I haven't traveled for fun in years. Really? That's amazing. I'll send you the dates. The Chicago trip was exactly what I needed. While Patricia attended her conference sessions during the day, I explored museums and coffee shops and bookstores. In the evenings, we ate deep dish pizza and walked along the lake and talked about everything and nothing. On our last night there, sitting at a rooftop bar overlooking the city lights, Patricia raised her glass. To friendship. And to women supporting women instead of competing. I'll drink to that. Can I tell you something? She set down her glass, suddenly serious. Meeting you changed something for me. I'd been going through the motions for a long time. Work, home, sleep, repeat. But seeing you rebuild your life with such intention, such joy, reminded me that I should be doing the same. What do you mean? I've been at the same hospital for 20 years. It's comfortable, but I'm not challenged anymore. I'm not growing. Watching you take risks with your business, watching you try new things and embrace change, made me realize I've been playing it safe for too long. So what are you going to do? I applied for a director position at a different hospital. Bigger role, more responsibility, better pay. I find out next week if I got it. Patricia, that's wonderful. I'm terrified, she admitted. But also excited. I haven't felt excited about work in years. You're going to get it. And you're going to be amazing. We clinked glasses again, and I felt grateful for this unexpected friendship that had grown from such difficult circumstances. Patricia had helped me when I needed it most, and now we were helping each other grow. True to my prediction, Patricia got the director position. She started her new role in November, full of nervous energy and enthusiasm. I threw her a small celebration dinner, inviting Tasha and my mother. The 4 of us sat around my dining room table, eating the fancy meal I'd catered, laughing and telling stories. This is nice, my mother said, looking around at all of us. Good friends, good food, good times. It really is, I agreed. And I meant it. My life looked nothing like I'd planned a year ago. I wasn't married. I wasn't building the future I'd envisioned with Brandon. But somehow, this felt better. More authentic. More mine. After everyone left, I stood in my living room, looking at the vibrant colors I'd chosen, the art I'd hung, the plants thriving in every corner. This house reflected who I actually was, not who I'd been trying to be for someone else. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia, "Thanks for tonight. For everything, really. You're one of the best friends I've ever had." "Right back at you," I replied. "Proud of you for taking the leap with the new job. Learn from the best." I smiled at that. Me? Someone to learn from. A year ago, I'd been the person accepting notes from concerned nurses, discovering my life was built on lies. Now I was apparently inspiring others to make changes. Funny how life worked out sometimes. The Thompson Industries project wrapped up in December with results that exceeded everyone's expectations. Their rebrand launched to enthusiastic public reception, sales increased by 30% in the first quarter, and their CEO sent me a personal thank you note along with a substantial bonus. "This is the kind of work that puts you on the map," Brittany said, waving the check. "We should be leveraging this success. Getting publicity, pitching bigger clients." "Already on it," I said, pulling up a presentation I'd been working on. "I've been invited to speak at the National Marketing Conference in March. Perfect platform to showcase what we did with Thompson." "You're speaking in front of hundreds of people. Terrifying, right? But also exactly the kind of opportunity one need to take the firm to the next level." Over the next few months, everything accelerated. The conference speaking engagement led to 3 new major clients. I hired 2 more employees to handle the increased workload. My firm, which I'd started in a tiny rented office 6 years ago, now occupied an entire floor of a downtown building. "You need a better title," Tasha said when I showed her our new office space. "Founder and CEO sounds more impressive than owner and marketing consultant." Founder and CEO it is. The growth was exhilarating but also challenging. I worked longer hours than ever, juggling client meetings and employee management and strategic planning. But unlike in my marriage, where working long hours had made me feel guilty, now it felt purposeful. I was building something meaningful, creating opportunities not just for myself but for my whole team. In February, a magazine that focused on women in business reached out for an interview. They wanted to feature me in their Rising Stars issue, highlighting successful female entrepreneurs under 40. The interview took place in my office, with a photographer capturing shots of me at my desk, presenting to my team, even one artistic shot with me holding a paintbrush in front of one of my canvases. "Tell us about your journey," the interviewer said. "What inspired you to start your firm?" I thought about how to answer truthfully without dwelling on my divorce. I wanted to create something that was entirely mine. A space where I could make decisions based on my vision and values. Where my success or failure depended on my own efforts, not on anyone else. "Did you always know you wanted to be an entrepreneur?" Actually, no. I stumbled into it almost by accident. But once I started, I realized this was what I'd been meant to do all along. I just needed the courage to try. The interview covered my business philosophy, my approach to client relationships, and my advice for other women considering entrepreneurship. It didn't mention my divorce at all, which felt right. That was part of my past, not the defining feature of my present. The magazine came out in March, with my photo on the cover and a 6-page spread inside. My phone exploded with congratulatory messages. Clients, friends, former colleagues, even some people I'd lost touch with years ago all reached out. My mother framed the magazine cover and hung it in her living room. "My daughter, the CEO," she said proudly. "Your father would have been so proud." The attention from the magazine led to more opportunities. A podcast interview. A guest lecture at a local university's business school. An invitation to join the board of a women's entrepreneurship nonprofit. I said yes to all of it. "You're becoming quite the local celebrity," Patricia teased over dinner one Thursday. "Should I start calling you Ms. CEO?" "Please don't. I'm still just me. That's what I like about you. Success hasn't changed you. But it had changed me, just not in obvious ways. I walked with more confidence now. I made decisions faster, trusting my instincts. I'd learned to set boundaries, to say no to opportunities that didn't align with my goals, to protect my time and energy." In April, I was invited to give a TED-style talk at a regional women's leadership conference. The topic was, "Building Success on Your Own Terms." I spent weeks crafting my talk, working with a speaking coach to refine my delivery. The night before the event, I was nervous in a way I hadn't been since the divorce proceedings. "You're going to be great," Tasha assured me over the phone. "Just be yourself. Tell your truth. The next day, I stood on that stage in front of 400 women and told my story. Not all the details, but the important parts. How I'd lost myself in a relationship, how discovering betrayal had actually set me free, how I'd rebuilt my life and career from a place of authenticity instead of obligation. For years, I made decisions based on what I thought I should do, I said. What would make me a good wife? What would make me acceptable? What would keep the peace? But, should is a prison. When I finally started making choices based on what I actually wanted, everything changed. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Building success on your own terms means getting clear about what success actually means to you. Not your parents' definition. Not society's definition. Yours. And then having the courage to pursue that, even when it's scary. Even when people don't understand. Even when you have to walk away from things that no longer serve you. I finished to a standing ovation. Women lined up afterward to share their own stories, to thank me for my honesty, to tell me I'd inspired them to make changes they'd been avoiding. A woman in her 50s with tears in her eyes grabbed my hand. I've been in a loveless marriage for 20 years. I've been too scared to leave. But hearing you tonight, I realized staying is scarier than going. You deserve happiness, I told her. Real happiness, not just comfortable misery. Another woman, younger, maybe mid-20s, said, I've been trying to make my business fit what I think clients want instead of doing the work I'm passionate about. Your talk made me realize I need to trust my vision. Do the work only you can do, I advised. Someone else can always do generic work. Your unique perspective is your competitive advantage. I drove home that night buzzing with energy and purpose. This was bigger than just my career success. This was about using my platform to help other women, to share the lessons I'd learned through pain, to maybe spare someone else some suffering. The next week, I started getting speaking requests from all over the region. Business conferences, women's groups, university classes. My calendar filled up months in advance. You need an assistant just to manage your speaking schedule, Brittany joked. Boss, you're kind of a big deal now. Don't let it go to my head. But she was right. Something had shifted. I'd gone from being a successful local consultant to someone with a regional presence and a growing reputation. And it felt amazing. Not because of the recognition, though that was nice. But because I was doing meaningful work, making a real impact, helping other women find their own paths to success and fulfillment. This was what I'd been meant to do all along. I just hadn't known it until I'd been forced to rebuild my life from scratch. A year and a half after receiving that note in the hospital, I found myself back in a courthouse. Not for my divorce this time, but as Brandon had requested a hearing to modify the settlement terms. Candace had warned me this might happen. He's been struggling financially. Lost his job, had to move in with his mother. Now he's claiming the settlement was unfair and he deserves more. Can he actually get more? Not likely. The original settlement was more than fair given his infidelity. But we have to show up and defend it. I'd almost forgotten about Brandon entirely. He'd become background noise in my life, a chapter I'd closed and moved past. Seeing him again, even in a courtroom, felt strange. He looked diminished somehow. Older, tired, less confident than the man I'd married. He sat at the defendant's table with his attorney, not meeting my eyes. The hearing was brief. Brandon's attorney argued that he'd been in a difficult emotional state when he'd agreed to the settlement terms. That he deserved a larger share of the marital assets. Candace methodically dismantled every argument. She presented the evidence of the affair, the financial records showing his spending on Simone, the proof that I'd been the primary breadwinner throughout our marriage. Your Honor, she concluded, Mr. Sterling made choices that ended his marriage. He agreed to settlement terms that were actually quite generous considering the circumstances. The fact that he's now experiencing financial difficulties does not entitle him to renegotiate a legally binding agreement. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, reviewed the paperwork silently. Then she looked at Brandon. "Mr. Sterling, the evidence shows you engaged in a prolonged extramarital affair during which you spent significant marital funds on your paramour. The settlement your ex-wife agreed to allowed you to walk away with minimal consequences. I see no grounds to modify these terms. Your request is denied." Brandon's shoulders slumped. His attorney whispered something to him, but he just shook his head. Furthermore, the judge continued, "This court's time should not be wasted with frivolous motions. Any future requests to modify this settlement will require substantial new evidence. Are we clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," Brandon's attorney said quickly. Outside the courthouse, Candace was pleased. "That went exactly as expected. He won't try this again." "Good." I looked back at the building, feeling nothing but relief that this truly was the final legal interaction I'd have to endure. I'm done with him. Completely. You should be. You've built an incredible life for yourself. He's just trying to blame you for his own failures. I thought about that as I drove back to my office. Brandon had blamed me, blamed Simone, blamed anyone except himself. He'd never taken responsibility for his choices, never acknowledged that his actions had consequences. But that wasn't my problem anymore. That evening, I met Patricia for our usual Thursday dinner. I told her about the hearing, and she listened thoughtfully. How did it feel? Seeing him again? Honestly? Nothing. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, not even satisfaction that his life isn't going well. Just, nothing. That's closure, she said. When you can look at someone who hurt you and feel neutral instead of hurt or angry, that's when you know you've truly moved on. I guess I have moved on. He's become irrelevant to my life. Just someone I used to know. That's healthy. Some people spend years carrying around anger at their exes. But you've let it go completely. I had to. Holding on to anger would have just kept me connected to him emotionally. I wanted to be free, and that meant freeing myself from caring about what happened to him. Patricia raised her glass. To complete freedom from past mistakes. I'll drink to that. A week later, I got an unexpected call from Brandon's mother. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to apologize, she said without preamble. For the things I said when you first filed for divorce. I didn't know the full story. Brandon lied to all of us. It's okay. I understand you were protecting your son. That's kind of you, but it's not okay. I was cruel to you when you were the victim in all this. She paused. He's having a hard time, you know. Lost his job, can't find another one in his field. He's been living with me for months. I felt a flicker of sympathy, quickly suppressed. I'm sorry he's struggling, but that's not my responsibility anymore. I know. I'm not asking you to help him. I just wanted you to know that I understand now why you left. And I'm sorry for trying to make you stay with someone who didn't deserve you. Thank you for saying that. For what it's worth, you seem to be doing really well. I saw that magazine article. Your business looks very successful. It is. I'm happy. Good. You deserve that. She cleared her throat. I won't bother you again. I just needed to say I'm sorry. After we hung up, I sat with my phone in my hand, processing the conversation. Brandon's mother's apology meant more than I'd expected. It felt like the last piece falling into place, the final validation that I'd made the right choice. I wasn't the villain in this story. I was the woman who'd had the courage to walk away from a situation that wasn't serving her. And I'd built something beautiful from the ashes of that old life. That weekend, I deep cleaned my entire house, a symbolic gesture of clearing out any remaining emotional clutter. I donated the last few items I'd been holding on to, things that had belonged to both of us that I'd kept out of some vague sense of nostalgia. Fresh start. Completely fresh start. On Sunday, I stood in my living room, looking at the space I'd created. Bright colors, interesting art, plants everywhere, books stacked on shelves. A home that reflected who I actually was, not who I'd been trying to be for someone else. My phone buzzed with a group text from my team. They'd landed a new client while I was off for the weekend, a major corporation wanting a complete marketing overhaul. Great work, team. I texted back. Let's discuss strategy Monday morning. Brittany replied, Boss, we're killing it lately. This firm is going places. She was right. We were going places. I was going places. And for the first time in my life, I was doing it entirely on my own terms, without compromise, without apology, without needing anyone's approval except my own. That felt like the real victory. Not the successful business or the speaking engagements or the magazine features, though those were wonderful. The real victory was knowing myself, trusting myself, and building a life that made me genuinely happy. Everything else was just bonus. 1 year and 11 months after receiving that note in the hospital, I stood in the ballroom of a downtown hotel, surrounded by 300 women at the annual Women in Business Gala. I'd been invited as the keynote speaker, asked to share my journey and insights with emerging female leaders. I wore a royal blue dress that made me feel powerful, my hair styled professionally, subtle jewelry catching the lights. I looked like the successful CEO I'd become, but more importantly, I felt like her too. The event organizer introduced me with a glowing biography that mentioned my business achievements, my speaking engagements, my rapidly growing firm. As I walked to the podium, I saw familiar faces in the audience. My mother, beaming with pride in the front row. Tasha, giving me a thumbs up. Patricia, looking elegant in a green dress. Brittany and several of my team members, their presence a show of support. I took a breath and began. 2 years ago, I received a note from a stranger that changed my life. It was brief, almost cryptic, check the camera. Those 3 words led me to discover that my marriage was built on lies, that the life I'd been living was a carefully constructed fiction. The room was silent, attentive. I could have ignored that note. Could have convinced myself that ignorance was easier than truth. But I've learned that truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a comfortable lie. Because you can't build anything real on a foundation of deception. I told them about the divorce, the process of rebuilding, the decision to focus on my career and myself instead of jumping into another relationship. I talked about learning to trust my instincts again, to make choices based on what I wanted rather than what I thought I should want. Success isn't just about business metrics or career achievements, I said. It's about building a life that feels authentic to who you actually are. It's about having the courage to walk away from situations that diminish you, even when walking away is scary. It's about choosing yourself, consistently and unapologetically. I shared the lessons I'd learned, the importance of having your own identity outside of relationships, the value of true friendships, the power of professional networks, the necessity of financial independence. When I started my business 6 years ago, it was a side project, something I did in addition to being a wife. After my divorce, I realized it was actually the foundation of my identity. My business wasn't supplemental to my life. It was central to who I was. And when I gave it the attention and energy it deserved, everything else fell into place. I wrapped up by encouraging the women in the audience to define success on their own terms, to build support networks, to invest in themselves both personally and professionally. You don't need anyone else's permission to be successful. You don't need a partner or a degree or perfect circumstances. You need clarity about what you want, the courage to pursue it, and the resilience to keep going when things get hard. Everything else is just details. The standing ovation lasted almost a minute. Women approached me afterward, sharing their stories, asking for advice, telling me I'd inspired them. One woman in particular caught my attention. She was about my age, dressed professionally in a maroon suit, but her eyes held the kind of pain I recognized from my own reflection 2 years ago. "I'm in the same situation you were in," she said quietly. Just found out my husband has been cheating. I'm terrified to leave, but I know I can't stay. You can leave, I told her firmly. It will be hard, but not as hard as staying in a relationship that's killing your spirit. And on the other side of that fear is freedom. I gave her Candace's card, Patricia's contact information, my own email. You don't have to do this alone. Reach out if you need support. She hugged me, tears in her eyes. Thank you. For being honest about how hard it is, but also how worth it. After the gala ended, my mother, Tasha, Patricia, and I went to a late dinner at an upscale restaurant nearby. We laughed and celebrated and toasted to friendship and new beginnings. I'm so proud of you, my mother said. Not just for your business success, but for the woman you've become. You're stronger than you were before all this happened. I had good support, I said, looking at each of them. I couldn't have done any of this alone. You could have, Tasha corrected. But you didn't have to, and that's what matters. You let people help you, you built a community, you created a network of support. That's smart, not weak. Patricia raised her glass. To women supporting women. To new friendships formed in unexpected circumstances. To building lives we're proud of. We clinked glasses, and I felt a wave of gratitude so strong it almost brought tears to my eyes. These women, my mother who'd always believed in me, my best friend who'd stuck by me through everything, my unexpected ally who'd become one of my closest friends, they'd all been part of my journey. The next morning, I went into my office early, enjoying the quiet before my team arrived. I made coffee in the break room we'd recently renovated and stood at the window, looking out at the city. My phone buzzed. An email from a potential client, a Fortune 500 company interested in my services. Another notification showed a LinkedIn message from a woman who'd attended my talk last night, asking if I'd be willing to mentor her. 2 years ago, I'd been signing divorce papers in Candace's office, wondering what my future would look like. Now I knew. It looked like this: a thriving business I'd built from scratch, a strong network of supportive relationships, a life that felt completely and authentically mine. I'd lost a marriage, but I'd gained myself. And that was the best trade I'd ever made. That afternoon, I was leaving the office when I saw a familiar figure across the street. Brandon, looking at his phone, waiting for a bus. He looked older, tired, wearing clothes that had seen better days. For a moment, I considered crossing the street to say hello. But what would be the point? We had nothing to say to each other. He was a stranger now, someone I used to know in what felt like a different lifetime. He looked up and saw me. Our eyes met across the busy street. I saw recognition flash across his face, followed by something that might have been regret or embarrassment. He raised his hand in a hesitant wave. I nodded acknowledgement, a brief, polite gesture that said, "I see you, but I have no interest in engaging." Then I got in my car and drove away. No anger. No satisfaction at his obvious struggles. No curiosity about his life or desire to know what had happened to him. Just complete, peaceful indifference. That night, I painted in my guest room studio, working on an abstract piece in bright oranges and deep purples. Music played through my speakers, something upbeat and joyful. I had no plans for the evening except this, and it felt perfect. My phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Usually I wouldn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Hi, I'm calling from Women in Business magazine. We'd like to feature you in an upcoming issue about entrepreneurs who've overcome adversity. Would you be interested? I smiled. Tell me more. As I listened to the details of the feature, which would include a photo shoot and an in-depth interview, I felt that familiar sense of possibility I'd been carrying for the past 2 years. This was my life now. Unexpected opportunities, meaningful work, genuine connections, authentic self-expression. A life I'd built from nothing, piece by piece, choice by choice. Was it perfect? No. Did I still have moments of loneliness or doubt? Occasionally. But those moments were honest, real feelings I could sit with and process. They weren't the constant low-grade misery I'd lived with in my marriage, the sense that something was fundamentally wrong but I couldn't identify what. After scheduling the magazine interview, I went back to my painting. I worked for another hour, adding layers and textures, playing with color combinations, losing myself in the creative process. Around 10, I cleaned my brushes and stepped back to look at the canvas. It was coming together, this abstract expression of joy and chaos and rebirth. Just like my life had come together, slowly, intentionally, beautifully. I turned off the lights in my studio and headed to bed, tired but content. Tomorrow I had client meetings and a podcast interview and a speaking engagement to prepare for. My calendar was full of opportunities I'd created, relationships I'd built, work I was passionate about. 2 years ago, a stranger had slipped me a note that shattered my world. But that shattering had been necessary. You can't rebuild something better if you're clinging to something broken. I'd let go of the broken pieces. I'd done the hard work of grieving and healing and growing. And I'd built something new, something stronger, something entirely mine. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about that woman at the gala, the one who'd just discovered her husband's betrayal. I hoped she'd find the courage to leave. I hoped she'd discover, like I had, that being alone was so much better than being with someone who made you feel worthless. I hoped she'd learn that you can survive betrayal. You can rebuild. You can thrive. And most importantly, you can do it on your own terms, creating a life that reflects your true self instead of a compromise you thought you had to accept. Because that's what I'd done. And my life had never been better.